They say silence is golden, and nowhere is that more applicable than when it is applied to the Death Angels from A Quiet Place. This handsome-looking specimen you see before you is but one of these angelic beings. But make no mistake, these are no envoys from God here to finally bring us salvation from another calamitous Star Wars spin-off from Disney, or yet another soulless open-world cash grab from Ubisoft. No, rather, they are the merciless messengers of death itself. So, grab your 12 gauge, grab your hearing aid, and come along, dear viewer, as me and my favourite test dummy, Mike, are going to show you absolutely everything there is to know about these creatures. What they are, where do they come from, what do they want, and what you can do to stand your best chance at surviving against them. First and foremost, what are the Death Angels? Well, they are aliens. Sorry to burst the bubble of all those who thought they were actually angels of some kind. The Death Angel story begins on a distant planet in a different galaxy. The planet was absent of light, suggesting it wasn't orbiting a star of any kind, or if it was so far away the creatures evolved without any kind of vision. Furthermore, the one piece of plant life we ever observed that originated from this planet has evolved to gestate and grow without needing to undergo photosynthesis, further suggesting the absence of a sun. Given that both animal and plant life were able to evolve and thrive over thousands, maybe millions of years, the planet did possess an atmosphere and the elemental building blocks to build and sustain complex life. The only information we are given on the Death Angel's home planet is that it was harsh, lightless, and had much stronger gravity than on Earth, and that at some point it reached a calamitous end and was destroyed. My personal belief is that the planet was a travelling body with no star system to call home. The only source of heat on the planet was its core, and it was thanks to the planet's thick atmosphere trapping the escaping heat that the planet was able to maintain a temperature that life was able to evolve with. This was not without its massive fluctuations, however, as the Death Angels are able to both survive the freezing colds of interstellar space travel and the scorching heats of falling through an atmosphere. This marries up nicely with the fact that this planet was a harsh and unforgiving place. Natural selection and survival of the fittest played a massive part in this creature's evolution. At some point, well after the Death Angels were already at their evolutionary peak, their planet was destroyed in a disaster. It is again my own belief that it hit another travelling planet or an asteroid big enough to obliterate the Death Angel homeworld. A large chunk of the planet was thrown out into deep space containing a number of Death Angels, including a Queen Death Angel, or Alpha if you prefer. Presumably, the creatures spent millions of years flying through space entombed in their chunk of broken world before they finally, by sheer chance, were caught in the gravity of our galaxy and then our own star, and by sheer bad luck, its path through our solar system just happened to coincide with Earth's orbit. How did they survive all these years in a complete vacuum with no air, as well as the bull-shriveling cold of just above absolute zero, and the scorching heat and radiation from our own sun? Let's just go with some kind of hibernation. The asteroid broke apart into meteorites upon entry, and the Death Angels rained down upon Earth. Now, before we explore what these near indestructible space refugees get up to when they crash land on our little green and blue marble, let's take a closer look at these things. Let's get some basic physiology out of the way first. Appearance-wise, it's kind of a mix between a bat and a gorilla. Now, shockingly, despite these beings having evolved on another planet, they share a lot of similarities with us. They have a skeleton, they have muscles, and they have organs that break down organic matter. They also have red blood. Now on Earth, that is thanks to the iron in our blood reacting with oxygen from the air. Oxygen is the third most common gas in the known universe, so it would make sense that these creatures, like us, evolved to use it as an energy source. In the same vein, pun intended, they must also have a circulatory system to move blood around their bodies, and a pretty powerful one thanks to the enhanced gravity of their homeworld. Blood cells are subject to decay, of course, so they must also have a bone marrow, or an alien equivalent to create new cells. They also have lungs and they breathe air, as we clearly saw in the third film. Therefore, we can infer they gather oxygen from the atmosphere and metabolize it just like humans. We can also infer from this their home atmosphere would have had to have had a very similar composition to Earth's, with a healthy level of oxygen in it. Living things that breathe to survive evolve with the atmosphere they have. Just look at the history of Earth. Millions of years ago, when the Earth had more oxygen in the atmosphere, creatures were a lot bigger. As the oxygen concentration reduced, so too did the size of these creatures. If I took Mike, who is used to an atmosphere of roughly 21% oxygen, and stuck him in a sealed chamber and lowered the oxygen, he would die from a lack of oxygen. If I whacked the oxygen up, he would also die, but from oxygen toxicity. My point is, adapting to a new atmosphere takes a very long time. Therefore, these creatures had to be adapted to an atmosphere with a similar makeup as our own. This also includes an atmospheric pressure similar to our own, with a little bit of wiggle room here and there. And seeing as these creatures didn't go the way of the Martians in War of the Worlds, they must also have a very sophisticated immune system to fight off pathogens. It's fair to say that if their homeworld made these fuckers, then it must have some kick-ass microbial life on it too. Probably their most well-known attribute is their advanced hearing. It is perfect. With the complete absence of light on their world, these beings instead developed an extremely keen sense of hearing, culminating in the evolution of a peak form of echolocation. This allows them to map their environment via sound, just like the clickers from The Last of Us. They can even unfurl their various layers of armoured plating, exposing their ears to fine-tune their hearing to detect even the smallest of sounds, and isolate different tones and frequencies at great distances. Of course, this renders their ears vulnerable, so they will only do this if they feel it is safe enough to do so. Thanks to the harshness of their homeworld, the creature's skin is strong, very durable, and made up of several layers of thick chitinous-like armour. It is strong enough to survive extreme temperatures from either end of the scale, swings in gravity, and the rigour of being inside a meteorite as it tumbles arse over tit while burning up in an alien atmosphere. What this means for us poor humans is that bullets are completely ineffective at getting through and under the armoured skin to the vulnerable fleshy bits underneath. And as we saw in the second film, they are immune to explosions and fire damage. You'd be better off throwing big stones at them, at least they would make less noise. The final boon in their skill tree is super strength. While they may possess a rather lean frame, appearances are deceiving. The gravity on the Death Angels' homeworld was much stronger than ours is on Earth. This means their strength is supercharged here on Earth, as their muscles don't need to do as much work to achieve their maximum strength. We see this in them effortlessly flipping cars, ripping through steel and tearing down trees. A couple of final perks are firstly their super fast running speeds. They can easily keep up with speeding cars, making them near impossible to get away from. In fact, a few sources I have found quote their top speeds at or in excess of 300 miles per hour. The final arrow in their quiver is their ability to climb. Thanks to those sharp claws and powerful muscles, they can climb buildings, jump from one to the next or onto a target, and even climb up sheer glass. But for all their perks, they do have two main weaknesses. First, their hearing is so advanced and so delicate that high-frequency sounds are agonizing and debilitating for the creatures to hear. The higher the frequency, the better, because it hurts them more. High-frequency sounds send them into sensory overload, which will paralyze them in place. You can then deploy your Uno reverse card, and now you have the advantage over them. While they are stuck in this loop of agony, their armored plates will flare out, leaving their fleshy body vulnerable to attack. Secondly, because they are so heavy and so dense, they cannot float or swim in water, making any large enough body of water a brilliant natural obstacle. On a related subject, the sounds of rushing water, such as those from a waterfall, will create enough natural noise to block out most other sounds. So, for your best chance of survival, live on a boat next to a waterfall or find a nice island. You could also travel in heavy rain, or in a pinch, setting off the water sprinkler system in a building will also mess with their echolocation. In fact, after it was determined these things couldn't swim, the National Guard evacuated people out to sea and nearby islands, but this was not all smooth sailing. As one survivor pointed out that out of 10 ships, only 2 made it because of the panic. A slightly weirder quirk of the Death Angel is that electricity seems to degrade in their presence. We see this when lights begin to flicker and turn on and off when they are near. It is not known why, but a popular theory I've seen describes how the Death Angels seem to have an understanding of where others of their kind are. They won't attack each other, and they have been observed working in packs on a few occasions. It is possible they have a collective consciousness, or maybe a telepathic way of communicating, or perhaps just a simple electromagnetic influence or an aura between them that affects electrical currents. Obviously, There were no light bulbs on their planet, so this is merely a creepy side effect of a yet unknown biological function of the Death Angels. Finally, to wrap up the physiology of these things, the Death Angels are not significantly intelligent. Rather, think of them as more of a cattle-like species. Confirmed by the director of the films, Krasinski himself has said these things are not sapient, they are just vicious animals. A quick final word as well on the direction of the films. The sound design is to be applauded. Did you know the sound of the Death Angels walking was made with crab sticks? The sound of their ears opening was made with lettuce and celery, and the sound of their echolocation was made by firing a stun gun at some grapes. Right then, now that we know where the murderous space cows come from and what they are all about, let's take a look at what they are and what do they want. For the most part, the Death Angels don't want anything. These aren't beings like ourselves with a higher purpose, desires, a calling in life. They are just animals acting on impulses and instinct. Their instinct is to kill and destroy anything that makes noise. They will attack cars when their alarms go off. They will kill completely nonchalant animals such as raccoons or a barking dog. And they will kill humans such as a grieving old man, a father sacrificing himself to save his children, or an idiot called Mike. The weirdest part about their killings is that they don't eat the things they've killed. Instead, they are herbivores. The director described them in fact as farmers, as leafcutter ants even. They consume plant life that they themselves create, and they go about this in a very interesting way. The Death Angels will kill humans and other animals and then take the corpses back to the nest where the alpha, the pack leader, or in the case of the film, the queen resides. A colossal monstrosity, significantly bigger than the others. In the nest are a series of pools filled with a pink, glassy liquid. Presumably, this is a secretion, maybe from the queen herself. The bodies are then deposited into these pools where they are broken down and become fertilizer for their crops. You know how you can get those boxes of fertilizer that contain bones and blood mixed in for extra nutrients? Well, just think of all the nutrients and chemicals we as a species are packed with. Potassium, nitrogen, iron, oxygen, hydrogen, carbon. We are just fertilizer to the Death Angels, just little breathing bags of chemicals. And from these pools spawn these little egg things, and inside them is a plant-like material that the Death Angels are able to feed on and draw sustenance from. And so, circling back to what do the Death Angels want, just like any form of life, when you knuckle down to the bare bones of it all, it just wants to survive. Their goal is no different than when they were on their homeworld. They are just a simple, but physically superior life form that is just doing what it needs to survive in this new environment. Ironically, humans have been killing and using animals to survive forever. It's part of our evolution, it's how the food chain works. In fact, as I've said, we even pack bits of dead animals into our own fertilizers, which are then used to grow crops for us to consume. In this case, you are the fertilizer. Of course, none of that matters now. It's too late. It's heard you when you cleared your throat a few minutes ago. In fact, it's behind you, right now. The sound leaking out from your speakers or headphones is going to lead it right to you. Nah, I'm just kidding. Check out this video for another great story, and please be sure to leave a like if you made it this far. It really helps the channel. Big up the patrons, and special thanks to Viger, Ryan Brenner, Infinitune, and Andre Bachot.